Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Harley Quinn, Season 4, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have Ivy going to Malcon, which is on the moon, and I really like that we got to see Lex in a very different light than we've really gotten to see, at least in the show. Because every time Lex has always popped up, and it feels very befitting because it's Giancarlo Esposito, that it feels like he's this cool, calm, and collected person. He's always been like this kind of suave, powerful villain, and then in this episode we saw like how fragile his ego is and just how conceited he is, and how like he's like, oh, everything about me, he's like, legally there is no Lex. Or like he says, there has to be one legally, or there hasn't had to be. But like basically everything about him is artificial. He constantly is having his calves pumped, even though he's wearing pants. And it is like, and this is something I've never really heard. I mean, I kind of knew it, but I've heard, it's so interesting. I've heard people talk about it a lot more, with obviously the talk of, hey, if there's going to be like a new Lex in the, DCU and everything. It's a conversation of what kind of Lex would you want? Would you want someone that's kind of on the bigger side? Because Lex, I guess traditionally in the comics, does work out because he can't physically match Superman's strength on his own, but maybe like physique wise, I can be on the same level. That it is this like, I don't want to just be smarter than you. I want to be stronger than you. I want to be bigger than you. That so even now it's like, oh, like the two Johns are helping sculpt his body, and it's like, oh yeah, they're talking about his cum gutters and everything, and it's like, oh yeah, like Superman wishes he could look like this, and talking about him being kind of a super illegal alien and everything, which I was like, kind of makes sense that Lex would kind of push that angle. I mean, that was actually part of his story in Supergirl, wasn't it? If I remember correctly, he was definitely pushing the very like anti-alien agenda, if I remember correctly. I mean, maybe he typically always does. He definitely got beef with Superman, but I think it kind of allocates to him just being xenophobic in general. It's also just like, I want to be the prettiest princess at the ball type of thing. Of like, I want everyone noticing me. But like, I've never really gotten to see Lex like that. Like I said, especially in this show, to see him so like the way he is, like egotistical, to the point when he's talking to Ivy, it's like, oh yeah, did you hear about that thing in Gotham where someone replaced all the male trees with female trees? She's like, oh yeah, I was the one behind it. And what did he do? He proceeded to mansplain, which obviously is bad enough, but it's extra condescending when you're mansplaining it not only to the person who did it, so there's that, but you're also mansplaining the differences between like male trees and female trees, which once again, I'd said at the time, I didn't know the difference. I'd never heard that before. But you're talking to Poison Ivy. She's the best of the best in the field of plants. So it's like, she doesn't need an explaining. She's the one that could easily do a dissertation on any type of plant life and stuff like that. So it's like, it's double insulty in that regard. So I mean, he's such a condescending dick. But going back really quickly about the Superman of it all, I do love that Clark is there as his reporter self, like doing that, which I thought was so interesting. Because other than Batman, Bruce, like Bruce is the only person we've gotten to see him like as just Bruce Wayne. Because obviously the superheroes aren't prominent in this show. They've made appearances here and there, mainly in the first season, a little bit in the second season, a tiny bit in the third season. Obviously, like, the Bat family's always been, like, the core. Specifically, Bruce has kind of been Batman. But even then, like, for a while, he was mainly just Batman all the time we saw him. And then, like, obviously, we got to see more Bruce, especially last season. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But it's like seeing Clark being able to just be Clark, because no one else, the few superheroes that popped up, we haven't really gotten to see them just kind of live their lives as they're like, we didn't see The Flash as Barry Allen, or Wonder Woman as Diana Prince, or so on and so forth, so that was just kind of interesting seeing him to get his job. And he was starting to act weird, because I was like, why are you acting so weird? What's in that drink? And then later on he points out like, oh yeah, this entire place has been lined with kryptonite. He's like, kind of makes sense. Like, so part of me wonders, was it in the drink too, and was that having an effect on him? Well, because like, I know like him and Kryptonians and speedsters, it's really hard for them to get drunk because of their metabolism. At least that's my understanding. I know with speedsters they can't get drunk. They need special ways to get drunk, basically. But I think the same thing applies to Kryptonians, so that's why I'm like, maybe that's why Clark's not used to it. He was almost like jazzed and kind of almost like on speed or something. That's why I was like, because I know, obviously, like, Smallville touched on, like, how different kryptonites could have, like, different effects on them. Once again, I don't know if that's just I think that's just a Smallville thing. Not too many things outside of that really touched on that, except for, like, Supergirl's touched on that, and so was Superman and Lois, like, different kryptonites, but I'm curious, is that something more prevalent in the comics post-Smallville, or was that always something in the comics I just wasn't aware of? Tensions and all that aside, I just thought that was interesting. All that, like, shit Lex is kind of talking about Superman, and he's right there in front of him. I also love that he's with Talia, and that, you know, because this is supposed to be like, hey, the 1%ers are here, and he's like the 1% of the 1%ers. And so for him, it's like, right, rather than having sex because you have to get all dirty and sweaty and the cleanup, it's better just to hire someone to have sex in front of you and you get to watch it and enjoy it that way. He basically had some guy as dressed up kind of like with the cape as Superman have sex. I love the guy, like the cape fell off and Lex is like, hey, what did I say about the cape? He's like, it gives me a wedgie. He's like, you put it on until the end. He's like, you know what? I'm not even in the mood anymore. I guess it was good for Talia because she was like, that was good. So I guess that she kind of enjoys that in that capacity too. But it's like that, because I always know like how twisted Joker and Batman's relationship was. It's just so interesting to see how like sick and twisted Lex had. I mean, to be fair, it's a very adult version it's an adult cartoon, so of course they're going to lean into it. But the fact is, he has such a Superman complex that he kind of gets off watching Superman, I guess, like have sex, but also get dominated because Talia was like, yo, flip him over and play with his ass. So, because part of me was almost wondering too, because they did this with Superman, I was like, is that supposed to be like the creators of this, like the writers and even the animators, like, was this almost, I'm assuming it started with the writers though, but I'm like, is this supposed to be a kind of making up for the fact is they couldn't do the whole thing last season of Batman going down on Catwoman? But then I also had to think, probably not, because I doubt this has anything to do with that. Just the fact is, you went to the other major pillar in the DC universe. You couldn't do the Batman going down on Catwoman thing, but it wasn't, because the thing is, it's not even Superman. It's someone kind of wearing a cape supposed to represent Superman, so it's not a one-to-one. But it feels interesting that you kind of, like, it's like seeing these superheroes in a sexual sense, even though this isn't the actual Superman. That would have actually been Batman going down on actual Catwoman. So, but what also crossed my mind was like, let's not forget there was a Court of Owls orgy last season, so there's no thing of like, oh, did they do that just because they couldn't do this? It's like, no, they just do wild shit just for the sake of doing wild shit. So that's all the reason they needed to. It's like, oh, we're able to do this, then we'll do it. So I think that's all that takes. I don't think it was probably crossing their mind of like, oh, we couldn't do the Batman thing last time. Let's do this Superman thing, but make it not Superman so it's okay. I mean, maybe that is logistically how that happened, but tangents and all that aside. It is kind of sad that, like, Ivy, hey, I'm the head of the Legion of Doom, and she still gets no respect. Because Lex seemed at least, you know, in episode 1 be like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, it's good job, do what you're gonna do. But then, like, the moment she's here, because he even says it himself of like, oh, not only, like, it takes a great mind, like a great thinker like me. He's like, not only did I hire a woman, I hired a green woman. So I was like, oh, okay, so it's a publicity hire of like, yeah, to show like how, oh, great I am, of like, oh yeah, it speaks more about me than it does about Ivy. Like, I'm gracious enough to not only, because it's almost like I think that's meant to be the joke of, not only did I hire a woman, so check that off the list, hired a green woman, so technically, I guess in his mind, it technically counts on a minority of minority hiring as well, so. But I do love that Ivy gets to kind of steal the show from Lex in so many capacities, because she was only supposed to like do a 45-second intro for him at his panel, because she wasn't really a guest panelist there. Either way, I love that the hot shot at this place is Steppenwolf, which is so interesting because, I don't know, because Steppenwolf doesn't, I mean, obviously they made him more of a bigger threat in the Justice League movie, but, you know, he's kind of, obviously plays, not even second, third, fourth fiddle to Darkseid, so it's kind of like, you're not that special, but I mean, it's like, you still handed everyone their asses in Justice League except for Superman, because Superman whooped that ass. Both versions of the movie, so it's like, That's where it almost feels like it's meant to kind of counter that a little bit of like, oh yeah, like Steppenwolf's kind of a badass, but also a punk, but like literally everyone kneels to him. Like he was talking to his dog, like and every villain around was like, okay, sure. Cause and it's like, I love Lex. It's like, oh my God, Steppenwolf, you're like the coolest. He's such a simp. Because it's like he tries to be so cool and powerful, but then like he kneels so easily to someone else, which is so interesting. I guess it's also supposed to play into like, like right, CEOs are supposed to be the ones that are like, yo, like you're so rich and powerful, you need kind of your stress relief. So they're the stereotype is they're the ones that's like, oh yeah, like humiliate me, step on my balls, step on me, kick me, mommy type of thing. So I guess it almost like, right, that's why he has a complex he does with Superman and why he has like someone kind of role play as Superman having sex in front of him. So it all kind of feeds into itself. But I love Ivy got Steppenwolf's attention by like yanking what seemed like it was definitely Mark Zuckerberg. Like she like let him drift off into space. And I love that later on it's like, yeah, hashtag where is Mark? And then, like, the person she pulled off of the panel had to be Elon. I mean, it makes sense, but it also is very timely because there's the whole, obviously, Threads versus X situation. But also, like, the whole, oh, yeah, Zuckerberg and Musk duking it out in the boxing ring. So it's even more timely than probably even when they wrote this. Probably even when they animated this. Either way, tangents and all that aside, I just thought that was so interesting. And she got Steppenwolf's attention. He was like, yo, I like your style. I've got unlimited power and resources. You've got unlimited ideas. Let's kind of like talk, And Lex was kind of embarrassed when he found out, like, right, she's been going around talking and she kind of hijacked a lot of stuff. And I love, like, at the panel, like, he has, like, this laser that he's like, hey, we're going to, like, expand, like, we're going to recoup the ozone layer and basically save the planet from global warming. That way the planet's saved so we can destroy it all over again. But it's like, yeah, but isn't that conscience villainy like Ivy was trying to do? Are you stealing Ivy's idea? And I love it's like, hi, Ivy, would you have kind of picked on me? Would you have ignored me in middle school? It's totally perfectly fine if your answer is yes or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, like you said that you like bread. Do you want to comment on that? I love how stupid it was and how he's so frustrated. He was pumping his calves too much and they literally exploded in front of everybody. And he was like, you know what? Fuck you guys. Everyone get off my damn moon, and kind of opened the airlock. And you saw like some people like their eyes were about to get sucked out of their heads, which Elon, who was it? I can't, it was like, I don't remember that lady's name. She bashed Elon in and like his eyeball came out and she golfed it to, I think, Livewire, who took it as a souvenir. Oh, that was just wild. So, once again, it's like the whole thing was once again supposed to be a 1%ers, and those two are like Musk and Zuckerberg are there. So it's just like, I mean, like obviously in real life, but also in the capacity of the show. So it's just like, yeah, that's just wow, because both of them just ended up dying at the end of by the end of this episode. So, but at the end of the day, Ivy gained a powerful ally in Steppenwolf. So I'm curious to see what kind of business talks they'll have on the villainy front and what this kind of means for Lex post all of this. He walked away kind of embarrassed, and Talia kind of rubbing his face in it and like, yeah, like that didn't kind of work out for you as everyone's leaving, trying to escape the moon bases, Malcon as it's getting shut down because like, yeah, you don't want to get sucked into space and die. So we have that side of things. And then back on Earth, we have the whole situation with the Bat family. We get to see Harley in her Bat outfit because she's saving Joker from Two-Face. And I even love that Joker was like, oh yeah, I bet you miss being evil, don't you, Harley? And she's like, dude, stop projecting on me, which is a relevant story because it ends up seeming like it might be relevant for both of them. But either way, the Bat family were missing their tools. And I thought the story beat was going to be, because Alfred's not there, they're pamper them anymore. Like, he's the one that set stuff up for them. So maybe now that he's gone, they've kind of fallen apart without him. Turns out that's not the case, which we did get an Alfred appearance. Like, he was there as a, I guess like it was some wine he had made while in prison and everything. So he was kind of there to kind of showcase that off. I guess it was almost kind of like a work release program from prison for him. Other than that, it turns out Talia, to kind of recoup a lot of the money that Wayne Enterprises lost, is basically all the money that's going towards funding the Bat operation are now kaput. She takes all the weapons because it's all Wayne Enterprise tech anyway, property. So she's taking all of that to kind of compensate, which I'm like, I'm probably reading way too much into it, but it's like, the timing's interesting considering it's like, well, what has Warner Brothers Discovery done? They've kind of axed and nixed a lot of stuff, even things that were in production for the sake of tax breaks and stuff like that. So, see, once again, I'm probably reading way too much into it, but you can't help but think of an interesting parallel. And what does Talia do? She ends up leaving in her giant rocket, and then you have Harley be like, yo, shouldn't you have done that first? Which there's a whole conversation because of the writer's strike, the actor's strike of like, yeah, do CEOs need to get paid as much as they do, especially when Zaslav's name is brought up. Him and Iger get brought up the most about how much they make in comparison. Like, do you really need to make that much money, especially when you're talking about, hey, these companies are like, oh, they're losing money. Like, they're making some profits, but not as much as they probably should. It's a whole thing, but it's like, yet your CEOs are making millions in the doubles, if not triples of millions. So that's, so felt very particular with just Harley. Like, whoa, couldn't she have gotten rid of that first, her giant rocket? But it's like, no. I'm not going to get rid of what I have. I'm going to get rid of what you have because it's our property to kind of get rid of. It seems like that was, because I'm sure this was at least probably written before any of that started going down with, like, it's obviously starting with Batgirl getting trashed. Like, I don't know that for a fact. I'm trying to think, like, because Harley Quinn season 3 happened. So yeah, it was definitely after all that, and so I can definitely see like this coinciding with that, and it just happens to be continues to be even more relevant and prevalent, even more so than probably when they wrote it. It's just as timely in so many regards. But either way. But Talia also said, like, they've gotten so attached to using their gadgets, they've kind of lost what it means to kind of fight with their hands. And I love Damien being like, yo, mom, I got abs. And she hits his stomach and goes, oh, come on. And she got him a birthday present, which was 5 months ago was my birthday, and you also got me a silver rattle. So they had to pull all their resources together of like, right, we need to make money somehow. Harley makes some money by selling Ivy's underwear, which I even love Ivy being like, oh yeah, because people were so jazzed about me at ModelCon that like, oh, like someone in the bathroom tried to steal my underwear. She's like, I would never admit this publicly, but it's kind of nice knowing that someone wants to kind of steal my underwear. So Harley was able to make a nice pretty penny off of that, where she was also training Damien, speaking of the whole secret identity thing, was so interesting because I'm like, we've only seen Damien as just Damien this season. This is our first, even we got introduced to Nightwing last season, but just seeing him as Dick outside of the costume, we've gotten that. Obviously, when was Barbara introduced? Season 1 or season 2? Season 2. She was already kind of Barbara Gordon. We saw her become Batgirl, so we'd already kind of gotten that. So, like I said, it's so interesting that the Bat family is the only ones with like whose secret identities we play around with a little bit. I also meant to bring this up earlier. I think I talked about it a little bit. I do like Harley's outfit. I just think it's so interesting she doesn't wear a mask. You would just think she would, but I guess it's like, yeah, once again, I don't know if she's really going to continue what she brought up last episode about separating the whole, what was it? Hargrit? Like, I don't know if she's going to continue doing that or not, trying to separate between the villain and hero, like the secret identity and the hero. I don't know if she's really going to keep doing that. That might be relevant to like the ending of this episode, which we'll get to in a second, but going back to before I went on my tangent, Harley's teaching them like, right, you fight, everything around you is a weapon, which we've seen that time and time again. Not only does she have her signature bat, obviously sometimes her signature mallet, but it was also like, yo, Harley is like very And it's very Batman-esque to use your environment to your advantage. So, like, Harley's used to that, and she's trying to teach them, like, don't just rely on your gadgets. Which, it comes full circle at the end, when they ultimately, like, beat up the house guests because it turns out they rented out, because they end up, like, kind of Airbnb-ing, like, Wayne Manor for the purposes of, making some money, and the people try to rob them, but sadly, Talia had already kind of robbed them, so that was kind of a moot point. And Harley tried to fight them, but they're drugged up, so they're not feeling any pain. But our group joins up and whoops the ass with a belt, what was it, a spoon, and a bottle, I think, is what they ended up using. And it's like, oh yeah, the Bat family, like, this is awesome, we kicked ass. And then they ended up installing security cameras, and the ending of the episode shows Harley destroying, I think, that might have been Nightwing's, like, air fryer that he referenced earlier in the episode. And then she seemed like she was sleepwalking, which might go back to what, tying into last episode, but also to what Joker said, that Harley might be missing a little bit of that evil. Like, she kind of had to complicate it, like, back and forth last episode. So I wonder, is her brain, like, having, like, a split between, like, right, she's been evil for so long, she's been a villain for so long, and she borderline anti-hero for quite a bit of the show, and now she's going full-blown hero, so maybe it's just like that adjustment period is still hard for her, so maybe, like, in her sleepwalking state, she's doing some villainous stuff, like, maybe that's what that's supposed to be, or maybe she was, like, they made such a point of the kind of show that she was kind of in a trance, like she was sleepwalking. So I think she's probably going to do some villainous stuff while she's asleep. Like I said, I don't, like, maybe it's a little bit of that Hargrit from last episode coming out. You know, she kind of had to bury Hargrit, like, she built Hargrit and then had to bury it again. I mean, not unless it's a thing of, I mean, maybe she's going to have, like, this triple personality thing where it's like, hey, I have Harleen Quinzel, the psychiatrist that's still in my mind, then there's the Harley that I am right now being the hero, and then there's the Harley that's still holding on to try and being the villain. Because that also ties into Joker, because he's, like, trying to live vicariously through everyone, because he's like, oh, he doesn't get to go to Malcon, and he's, like, liking all these Instagram pictures about, like, oh, what everyone's doing, from Ivy, from Livewire, what was her name, like, it was something like, number one Electra bitch or something is her handle or something like that. And he was just, like, living vicariously through them. And it's just, yeah, the mirror thing is fine, but he misses the villainy. You know, he's what's the word I'm looking for? He's a, civil servant now, kind of a 9-to-5er, you know, doing the whole family thing and kind of an honest living, interestingly enough. And the guy's talking about cutting the grass and he's just bored out of his mind. So later on, he blows the guy up and kind of has, like, this most demonic, deranged look on his face as the place is on fire and he's laughing up a storm. It's like, right. So I guess him and Harley might be going through the same thing, except Joker's doing it consciously. And I'm curious what that means for his mayorship, as well as what that means for his family stuff, if that's going to be an issue. I mean, they knew what they were kind of getting into when, like, right, when it's Joker, and he's been Joker for a while, but he's been a family man for so long now that that's kind of died down, obviously in between, like, season 2 and 3, so I'm not quite sure what to fully make of that. Like, that's my thought about it. I'm curious to see if that ends up being the route they go. It'd be really interesting that, and especially if both Harley and Joker are kind of going through, like, oh, getting that evil itch, but both of them kind of have, like, one's doing it subconsciously, one's doing it overtly. So I think that's going to be an interesting element to kind of tackle, if that, what, I mean, at least on Harley's side of things, if that's what that's implying. Because Joker, it's pretty prevalent of, like, yeah, he's missing that evil thrill that he's not able to get anymore. So it's like, part of me is like, you could just be an evil mayor, but I guess it's like he's actually a really good mayor, that even though it's boring out of his mind, he hasn't really done any evil as mayor. So maybe he's going to try and delineate between Mayor Joker and Mayor and evil Joker. I think that'd be a beautiful parallel if, like, right, Joker tries to, like, have his secret identity be, oh, I'm Mayor Joker, the good guy, and then I do some secret villainy stuff, and Harley's kind of on the same wavelength. Like I said, we'll have to wait to see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.